Well, I figured something out about the live screen share. There's a button that I was supposed to click that says Go Live, and it was covered by my McAfee Web Advisor thing trying to tell me something about the web report or something, and I can't make that go away. So I couldn't see that. I can't click the button. Why don't you just uninstall McAfee on this computer?
Still trying to get it.
I think I got it.
Oh yeah.
The button's right there, hiding under this.
Oh.
So I clicked under this, but I can't make this go away.
Oh.
I don't know. Okay. Well. Well, let's finish this up then. We're almost done. Building techniques. So, again, the things that really interest me are, what is it about people in this area, in the Americas, that caused them to be technologically at a disadvantage when the Europeans came? And what was their technological level, and why did they, how did they build the things they built without the technology that they were missing? So, for example, they're some of the things we would consider very basic. They don't have the wheel. They've got rubber, which we don't have, which Europeans didn't have at the time, but they don't have the wheel. How do you build the things that I'm about to show you without the wheel? Well, I have that same question about ancient Egypt, by the way. When they built the pyramids, they hadn't invented the wheel yet. And they would roll things on logs and things, but they're missing the wheel. They're also missing arches with keystones. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a big deal because you can't support the same weight without the idea of a keystone. And I'll show you what that means and what that's missing. They also don't have iron, though. So how in the world are they quarrying the stone that they're quarrying without iron? And without most metallurgy. I mean, I don't think they were even using brass tools at this point. Their metallurgical skills are way behind Europe's. And so bronze, brass, they're struggling even there. I think they have they've discovered metals, they can melt some metals and they make jewelry out of it, and that's it. And they're not making tools out of it. They're not making swords, and they're not making chisels. And so how did they mine the stone they mined? Well, the answer is they like limestone. Limestone is incredibly soft, but when it interacts with the air, it hardens. You can also burn it and turn it into a sort of cement. Cement and limestone, and I don't remember exactly the chemistry. At one point I actually understood the chemistry here, but limestone, you can actually break it up into a powder and then those bonds can loosen up. You can turn it into a paste, and then they harden when they interact with certain chemical bonds. And that's how you make cement out of it. But that's also how they cut the stone. The stone was really soft that they were cutting, but then it became hard after they cut it and exposed it. I mean, they may have baked it even. I'm not sure exactly what they did to it. That's how they got away with not having, these stone tools. But then they got this arch. I mean, how do you build an opening out of stone if you can't make an arch? Well, the Romans are the ones who invented the keystone arch as we have it today. It's called the Roman arch. And so even before that, we had this problem in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and they came up with essentially the same solution. And this is it. You can see it in these blocks. Where's my laser pointer? You see these blocks that stick out? This block has most of its weight on the block under it. And so only a little bit sticks out. So it doesn't fall over, because most of its weight's over there. And you just work your way up that way, and then you have a final stone that goes across both of it. Can you see the edges of that stone? That's one piece sits on the top.
It's like a Christmas tree.
Kind of, like an inverted Christmas tree. But I want you to notice something right here. Do you see the cracks? See those cracks forming? And you see how this is slightly bowed?
Oh, yeah.
The reason that's happening is because it's not distributing the weight right. These things push down this way, right into the opening. The forces are pushing down this way. There's nothing pushing the forces that way to hold the thing up. And we compare that to a Roman arch. You see this keystone, because these are cut at an angle, it's pushing this way. And so that directs the forces down and around the arch, and this directs the forces down into the arch, and they crack. And you can't support as much weight. But this is their technique for getting around the missing arch, which is the missing keystone. Now the other thing about this is you can't build one of these without a scaffold. What you do is you build a scaffold, and you put these stones on top of it until you put the keystone on, and then you can take the scaffold down and it will hold itself up. But it won't hold itself up until you put that final keystone in. These will hold themselves up as you build them. You put the stone down, and when I put this stone down, even without these stones on top of it, it will sit there, and then I can put this one down, and then I can put this one down. And at each step, more of their weight is on one side than on the other, so they'll hold themselves up. And I can build this arch without any sort of support. And that's why it's not obvious to build the arch this way. Because you can't. I mean, there's no way to... The intermediate step isn't self-supporting. And so unless you have this brilliant idea of building this support, then you never come up with this idea. And the support itself isn't obvious. I mean, so why would I do this? And until you do it and see how much better it works, it doesn't occur to you. And so there's certain things that once you invent them, it's obvious, but they're not obvious to invent. And it's interesting to see people work around this missing hole in their knowledge, that if they had it, it would have changed everything about how they built everything they built. So there's one that interests me. And the next is limestone, right? Limestone gets them around most of their missing holes, and this arch gets them around the others. And the final one is they don't have the wheel, and so if you look at the stones that they use, they're small. Unlike Egypt, where they get these big, monumental, big things, well, they moved those down the Nile on a river, and when they got them to the place they needed, they would pull them with ropes, and they put logs under them and roll them. And then they could move these really big rocks. Well, these people moved, and some of these rocks are really big. I mean, I don't want to downplay this, but they tend to build with smaller rocks and more of them, and then with cement holding them in place using this limestone. So it's a little different approach. Okay, so here's the map you wanted for the Olmecs. And so, I thought it just going through the Yucatan, right? I guess west of the Yucatan, right? Working your way around to the, anyway. This is the heartland of the Olmecs. And then again, this is the oldest civilization, 1400 to 400 BC, and this is when we start getting monumental architecture here. It begins with pottery. Once we get pottery, that's the beginning of this whole technological boom. The pottery will work its way north into the settled cultures, and they'll build pottery too. And I don't know if they invent it independently or if it travels or how this works. But pottery is something we find all over the place here, from our Indian ancestors that lived here. But again, it shows up here, and that's the beginning. And then they start building. First, they get corn, they get pottery, they get writing, and they start building things like this. So remember I said small stone. Every once in a while, they'll do it with a really big. This is a huge single stone weighing tons. This is the sort of thing the Egyptians would do. And they move these big stones, and then they would carve them. And again, the stone masks, I can't, no one knows exactly what all these are for, but the stone masks that I showed you earlier in religion, and then these big stone carved heads seem similar. But this is the beginning of monumental architecture, where you display the power of your ruler, your king, your civilization, your city, by building something just stupendously big that makes everyone stop and go, whoa. And the pyramids start from the beginning. So this is one of those early pyramids. But it's crude and rough, and it's grown over with grass and dirt, and it's not a smooth stone structure. But they're doing pyramids from the beginning. They start from the very beginning. To believe that they knew what magnetic north was. So I think what's more likely is that they wanted the sun to rise on a certain day down that causeway, and that's the general assumption, because the day that is their New Year's, it just so happens that that's the time when the sun lines up, perpendicular, such the shadows rise along this. So it's probably not due north, and by this is something that's not just unique to this one city. Mesoamerican cities are almost always oriented, I think it's 18 degrees off of true north. And again, we think that's so that the sun will rise along a certain axis on a certain day that's connected to their calendar. And then we have here It's called the Pyramid of the Moon and the Pyramid of the Sun. This is the big one. This is the third biggest pyramid in the world. Two of the pyramids in Giza are bigger. The third pyramid in Giza is smaller than this one. And here's what these things look like. And you, if I can get this stuff. There we go. This is the view from the Pyramid of the Sun looking toward the Pyramid of the Moon. So that's the one in the north. That's the Pyramid of the Moon. And remember, the north is the land of the dead, and the south is the land of the living, and the sun, which is why the Pyramid of the Sun is in the south. We have these small things around them. This is called the Path of the Dead, which is the road that goes between the two. It was named that by Europeans, not by the people who built the city. And the reason they named it that is because they thought these were burial grounds here. Again, that's because that's what they are in Egypt. So it just made sense, right? But it turns out that these are far more likely to be platforms upon which small sub-temples were built. So these are not probably burial grounds. The temple platforms and the temples that would have sat on top are kind of missing.
Some of our civilization's monumental architecture is closer than the Walmart.
Yeah, there is. In fact, there was a controversy over when the Walmart built it about whether they were taking care adequately of the relics that they were digging up when they dug their foundations, and caused all sorts of controversy and stir. I don't know. Can you see the Walmart network? I don't know if you can or not. But there is a Walmart nearby, and it created a controversy. I don't know if that's why you know about the Walmart.
Because they bribed the city officials to alter the zoning policy or something.
I think you have to bribe an official down there to get any permit approved,
That's
regardless.
Walmart people.
That's probably true. Here's the view the other direction. This is standing at the Pyramid of the Moon. You can see the sub platforms here. The little sub temples. There's an altar, something here in the middle. I'm not exactly sure what that was for. And if you look this way, you see the Pyramid of the Sun. And again, that's the big one. I think the Pyramid of the Moon is far more beautiful. I'm going to go back for a minute. There's the view of the Pyramid of the Moon from the Pyramid of the Sun. I think this is a beautiful temple because something about the way it's steeped and the way the kind of stairs go up it. I think it's very artistic. My eye likes it. It's prettier, I think, than the Pyramid of the Sun. But the Pyramid of the Sun is just this massive thing. Its size is something that just kind of dwarfs you. You stare at it and put a person next to it. It's staggering. And again, the goal is to elevate the temple, and the temple would have sat up here. And we're missing the temple, which is unfortunate. This whole building was just to elevate the temple, and the temple is gone. You see its foundations at the top. And you have this very interesting kind of ascent causeway up to the temple at the top.
So is the temple made of stone or wood?
I don't know. Exactly.
Was it already God?
I wish I knew. These are questions I don't know, unfortunately.
This is from like before 600 or so.
Yeah.
I think it's long gone by the time it's done.
Oh yeah, I think so. But I don't know what it was built from, and I don't know how long gone it was, and I don't know what remnants were there in ruins. And I mean, it had been abandoned long before they got there. That much I can tell you. What I don't know is, what ruins were present at what time and when the ruins vanished. Level one. And again, when I said they used a little smaller stone, you can see the cobblestone with the mortar. Mm-hmm. And what's impressive to me is that was able to hold that much weight. So I don't know how they work this. And maybe the inside is built out of different types of stone than on the outside. But at some point, I'd love to see someone tell me what these. Is that right? So they just kind of built around it. They piled up some dirt into a pyramid and then built. Because the Egyptian pyramids are stacked all the way through, and those carry a lot of weight, and they have to be very carefully. Mortar wouldn't hold that together. They have to be very carefully stacked.
This one, volume-wise, I think it's bigger than anybody. And today it looks like a mountain with trees growing on it. You would never know it's a pyramid. But they've got tunnels through it, and there was tunnels and things inside of the pyramid. if you go in it.
So this one was built on top of a cave. Again, this is this connection between the underworld. So there was a natural cave under here, and they expanded that natural cave and then built the pyramid on top of it. So there's part of the ritual and part of the symbolic architecture involves that connection to the underworld in the cave. I don't know. This is one of those places I want to go. So if you want to get together and we'll have a UU field trip and we'll all go down here and see it, I'd love to. This is a reconstruction of the way that things were painted. This one's in the museum next to it, but this is a reconstruction of what the temple's sort of facade would have looked like around it and on top of it. So brightly painted. You've got the serpents, and you've got this kind of red, which apparently is typical of the architecture, and then very, very ornately carved. This is Tikal in Guatemala, and the further I go down here, the less I know about some of these places, but I want to show you the pictures just so you get the idea of the sort of architecture we're dealing with and the sort of temples. And I don't know if we know enough to talk in detail about the rituals anyway. I certainly don't, but I don't even know if we know in general. But the later ones are steeper and not as big. So they shrink in volume. They end up with 9, which apparently is an important number. Kind of like for the Jews, it's 7. It's an reflection. They get 9, and so you get a lot of temples with 9 layers and a temple on top of the 9th layer, built more steeply so that you can get more people down here and kind of, all looking up at the temple sitting on the top. We do know one of the things they did there was this human sacrifice heart thing. I told those stories earlier. But we don't know, I don't know at least what else ritually they did in the temples. And you can see this temple structure built on the top of this step pyramid with 9 levels. This is the glyph for the city. As I remember, this particular city became kind of a named myth for other other cities for kind of, when you talk about civilization, you almost kind of name this city in Mayan and the other languages around it. I had a memory of this one, but I may have actually messed that one up. There's too many of these and I get them confused at this point. This is the main plaza during the winter solstice celebration. There's still people there who come to these places for religious reasons, even now. And I'm interested in not just the pyramid, but the rest of the city over here. If you look at that, it's a fairly impressive set of architecture, and I'd love to go there and poke around and actually see what's there. This is a map of the city. I believe is here. Plaza of the 7 Temples is here. Central Acropolis. Where's the central temple? I don't actually know. I did at one point. When I first put these up, I made sure I understood them, and now. Here's another palenque. How do you say it? Palenque. Yeah, Kiwi. That's like yeah. What's the name of the town just down the street? Milwaukee. So here's again. You'll notice again the nine levels with the temple on top. This one's a little wider. Very intricately carved. Very cool. And you see the idea. I saw it.
Right in there.
Yeah, right in there.
This is King Kinikran Balam II, one of the many rulers of Palenque. Detail from the temple tablet. And what's interesting to me is we know the name of the kings. When you get into writing that we can read that's on the walls, you start getting all sorts of details that are just fascinating. We know the name of the kings. We know some of the history of the city, when it was built, who built it, when different events happened, different wars that they fought. A lot of that history is recorded for us. I'm also impressed by the kind of multi-story buildings. I mean, it's easier to build a a pyramidal step thing that's kind of solid underneath you than it is to build a living space underneath you and have another living space on top of it. And they could do that. Well, almost, doesn't it? I mean, it may be later than some of the other architecture, but it's still early. Leave that date.
It's in the jungle.
Yeah.
There's a campground right next to the campground. It's howling monkeys, and then the tent campers that just above us, you know, and we got high on the marijuana. But that's this beautiful place.
Yeah, there's our corbelled arch. We showed you a picture of those same archways. And you can imagine if the Romans had built this, you can see exactly what it would have looked like, right? And you can see the difference, or the difference it makes. But you've got the same sort of thing, right? These pillared halls. And if the Romans would have done it, they would have arched this, and then they would have arched that. And then if the medieval people would have done it, they would have pointed the arches, and then the walls would have been thinner, and right. And you can see the technological difference and the impact that has on how you build things. And here's another detail of one of the reliefs. I say this one. Were you there? Uxmal. And it's, I'll probably find this one too. Here's the drawing of the different layout of the city, and then here's the picture. And these are really impressive stone buildings. Yeah, unlike the others, I've never seen one quite like that. That one's different. Pyramid Magician. This one was built on top of the pre-existing temple. It just kind of shows you that there was this temple here before, and then this guy built this other pyramid. Instead of right over the top of it, he built it off to the side, and he covered up the other one and built his own on top. And this is just an attempt to elevate this higher, up the ante. You outbuild your ancestors, right? And this one was already raised, you see, on this platform. They elevated it higher. I don't want to spend a lot of time because we've already covered the details. I just want to show you the pictures of the buildings at this point. It's gee whiz, how did they build those things? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You see that the repeated theme. Again, slightly rounded corners, that's interesting. And what's also interesting about these slightly rounded corners, apparently on the equinox, the sun rises just so that it makes this serpentine. And you see right here, this is the head of a serpent. And that's what you've got is a snake going up the steps with the snake's head at the bottom. So they've turned the staircase into a serpent with the rising sun across the curved edge. It's very clever. And there's the head of our serpent at the bottom. This is the ball court. So this is one of our cities with the ball court, and you can see that with the slope sides and the eye-shaped end zones at either end. So, okay, that's all I have, and this is what happens when I do something I don't know quite as well. I hope you. Thank you for bearing with me. I have a lot of fun learning something I didn't previously know, so thank you very much. Now here's the question. I'm out of topics. So, what do you want to do next month?
Have you already done, our local building, from
That's one I could do, but I think some of you probably know more about that than I do, which is fine. In fact, speaking of things we know more about, we talked about maybe doing the Baha'i. Would the two of you be interested in taking over for me 1 month and telling us about the Baha'i?
It would have to be after April.
Okay. Well, I can ask you again in April and we'll see. But I could do something next month. We could come up with the topic, and then if you'd be willing, I would love to. I'd love to have
In fact, you might have to be involved because May, of course, we're going to be occupied with meeting the building. And
I don't even know if we're going to have this class. For sure. Depending on the new building issues and things. Okay. The other thing I've considered doing is I have a textbook that I discovered from back when I was in college from a class on early Christian history. And I thought it would be fun at some point, if I run out of classes, to start at the beginning of that textbook and go through the whole class and just do the development of Christian history. I could also start these lectures over, which I haven't done.
Jesus, I was wondering how many, because I missed the early ones, so I wouldn't mind at all if you started early, but I don't know.
If you start over at
So I'm willing to start over. The trick is this took me about 2 years to get here. So if I start over, it'll be 2 more years before I get back. So we can do some of those early ones again at least. So I'm willing. I'm also willing to teach myself new subjects. So it depends. Do you want to hear me talk about something I know a lot about? Like if I did Egypt and Israel, those are redid Mesopotamia. Those are subjects I've spent some time with, and I can do a good job of hopefully telling you something you don't already know. And if you make me do Chaco Canyon, right, you're probably going to know as much as I do, but that doesn't mean it's not interesting. I'd love to learn.
yeah, starting over might help draw people to the church too.
Yeah. Let's not start over until we're in our new space then. If I start over, we can. So that means next month we need to come up with a new topic of some sort, and then.
Early Christianity.
If we started that one though, I mean, I've already done one on kind of early Christianity, but if I did a whole class on that, would be like a semester, but we only meet once a month. So it would be like another year's worth of classes on early Christianity, which we could do.
Would that be like the historical, what we really know, or are you talking more about this?
I'm talking about, like there'd be 1 or 2 classes on what the biblical record says and what we think may or may not be historical about it, and then but most of it wouldn't be on that, because we could spend forever on the historicity of Jesus and things. I prefer to just say the Bible has this story in it. This is the date when it was written down. We have questions about these aspects of its historicity, and that's a class. But I don't want to spend more than 1 day on that, because then what most of that early Christianity class was about was the early councils, the development of Christian ritual post that. So we start getting into the Gnostics and the arguments and the debates that led to Nicaea. A lot of that we know a lot about the early church fathers and how that developed and changed. The Gnostic texts we now have from Egypt through the non-commodity library tell us stuff about Christianity that that was from a sect that didn't win the orthodoxy debate. And so we can see what at least one other Christian sect was like before orthodoxy was kind of forced down everyone's throat. And so there's a lot of that early Christian stuff that I think is fascinating. And then there's then you get into the councils and what was the debate that caused Nicaea? What was the debate that caused the councils that followed it? What were they arguing about? What did they not agree on? And some of that may be technical, and some of us may not care. So I don't know. Yeah, it is. It depends on what we want to do. I think it would too.
Like there's gospels that were suppressed, like the Gospel of Thomas. And
Yeah.
The Gospel of Mary.
Yeah. Philip, Thomas, Judas.
But you just want to fill the next 2 months. Yeah.
That's true.
Or
Well, you said you're the summer last year.
I did.
What about the Druids?
We did do Norse mythology, and we skipped Norse mythology because I know nothing about it. Again, but I wish that's another one of the holes in my knowledge that I would like to fill. So I could do Chaco Canyon stuff because that's connected to what we just did. That might be good next month, and then I could do Norse mythology. By then we'd be in the new building, and we could start over if we wanted. Is that Okay, so I'll try to teach myself about Chaco Canyon and the other Pueblos. So I'll try to do Pueblo, Native American, South American, not South American, South U.S. Indian cultures, and I'll see what I can, Native American cultures, and I'll see what I can teach myself in the next month. I'll do that next month. And then I'll do Norse mythology or something. I may even do those in reverse order or something. I'm not sure. I'll let you know. And then
Whichever
we'll start
grandpa is
over.
okay with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
My turn.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
We'll be back for